What would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life?
Welcome to the Datsusara podcast.
If you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing.
Okay, here we go. All right, and welcome to another episode of the Datsusara podcast, everybody. And the episodes I'm trying not to have to edit, so we're just rolling right into it here. We're here with a returning guest, Dr. Oren Amitay, and welcome back, Oren.
Thanks, Chris. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Hungover? You sober? How you doing?
Yes, as some of you may remember, I certainly remember, I was extremely hungover when we last conversed. So it was, I'm surprised I made it through that. There were times in that interview where I thought I was going to have to call 911. But it was funny because I listened to it this morning just to review and make sure, what did we talk about and everything. And it actually came out pretty good, so...
I know, I told you that. I wasn't bullshitting you. If I thought you were doing a terrible job, I would have told you.
I thought for sure, and always just being nice, but it came out all right, so that was a pleasant surprise. But the good thing is that it came out so well conversationally that there were quite a few questions that I didn't get to ask you and talk to you about that were on the list, so I thought it'd be fun to have you back on and go through some stuff. So so thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I may run down questions a little more than I did last time, but we'll see. I may go conversational too. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I've noticed this, and it's kind of a funny thing between my psychologist friends online. All of you guys seem to love watching the UFC, but I don't think any of you are practitioners of mixed martial arts. What's the fascination?
I don't know for other people. I've been following, combat sports in one form or another since I was a little kid. I used to watch Ali on TV when they actually showed it on regular on ABC or something like that as a little kid. I used to watch wrestling as well as a little kid, watching, the Sheik come out, and it would freak me out. It was 11 o'clock at night or 12 at night, and we had this program to see this weird character fire out of his hands and stuff like that. So I can't speak for others, but I've always had an appreciation for the art of it and the violence as well, because and the aggression and violence, because the fact is that's part of who we are as humans. We are physical creatures. We're combative. We have that shadow, the dark side. So I've always enjoyed watching people be able to channel it in a healthy manner, because I think it is healthy if you've been able to make a career out of it and not suffer too much brain damage. So
Yeah, that's always nice. Good stuff. Yeah, I was thinking of you and Lee Malloy, who I just had on, and then Clay Rutledge, and it seems like everybody loves their UFC. So one of these days, we'll have to get together and have a giant UFC viewing party somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
That would be fun.
I got to tell you though, Chris, because in many cases, I'll watch UFC if there's an event or whatever. I'll stream it on my phone, or I'll watch it at home alone, and because I appreciate the sport and the art, and the combat and violence, but there's nothing like watching it live. I mean, there's something to that. That's true. A whole different it's a different atmosphere. The testosterone flowing, the energy. It's really quite different. So that takes us to a different. There's a different motive going on. Then I'm not sure what it is. I'm not betting on it or anything like that. I'm not getting that rush. But I really do just seeing a really wild audience really appreciating a great fight. I think it was Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit. When I watched that one, you're sitting there, just holy shit! The whole audience just that was 25 minutes of just so.
There is something to that, and as much as I don't like being in crowds, I definitely appreciate going to see some good fights. As there is something about that that's pretty damn exciting.
For sure. Yeah. Although I will say, for me though, I'll book weeks in advance because I want a good table. I don't get any thrill out of standing there shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people. I like to have my seat, got my drinks, got my whatever. Yeah. watching for that. That's I don't know. I'm a bit of a snob in that
No,
regard.
I am too, because yeah, it's not fun being jam packed, and it's especially not fun if if you're just paying for the real cheap seats up top. I mean, you might as well just be at home and get a better view because you're just staring at a jumbotron or whatever
Right.
TV, and yeah, that's no good. So yeah, if you're gonna go right, I don't know, go do it up. Yep.
Yeah, but what I meant was watching, like I'm watching in a bar. I'm not actually going to the live event. I'm
Oh,
watching with
even in a
everybody
bar.
at the bar.
Oh, yeah. Well, that
Yeah,
too. Yeah, you don't.
yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't seen a UFC event live. They've come to Toronto a few times, but
yeah.
I've never actually seen it live.
Yeah, that's something else. Yeah, like again, the crowds. I don't like being in crowds. I get that like cattle. Like I don't know. I get claustrophobic when I'm in large crowds. I mean, I can deal with it, especially with enough alcohol, whatever. But it's not my favorite place to be generally. But it is a lot of fun. But yeah, even just a bar. I remember when we first started watching those, it was always our whole gym and some of our friends would all get together for every fight, and that was so much fun. That was when the UFC was going once a month, and it was I liked it a lot better like that. It was easier to follow it, and yeah, those are good times. Yep, good stuff. So, and you're looking you look healthy, you look good. You just had kind of a big medical thing, but apparently you're up and at it, and somewhat or maybe fully recovered. I don't know how you doing on that front.
Yeah, so
If you don't
February
mind me
26th.
talking about it, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I think it's important because it speaks to what I preach all the time, which is, if there's things that you can't change, you need to learn to accept them and to work with them and to have the right perspective and right attitude. So, yeah, last February 26th, so 3 months ago, I had open heart surgery to replace a valve that is congenitally deficient. And the doctor, when he opened me up, I was much worse than they had expected. They said the blood work, all the tests, the cardiograms, I mean, the echoes, ultrasounds, none of them could have prepared them for how bad the heart really was.
wow.
So yeah, and for some people that would freak them out more. I was technically dead for a little while. The doctor said you can tell people that we intentionally, not on my part. They had to put me on ice for a few minutes to do some unexpected repair work. Okay, so a lot of people would look at that and that would freak them out, either thinking about it before or after. And for me, it's like I compartmentalize. I say, it happened. I'm doing well. I'm riding my bike. I can ride my bike. My heart's doing fine, everything like that. So I focus on that aspect rather than saying, well, hey, I could have died. Because before we did the surgery, I went to Costa Rica with my family. And I was, snorkeling, sky ziplining, stuff like that,
Yeah.
and running up mountains, and right. And this was when my heart was starting to fail, like it was really, really failing, which is why they needed to do the surgery.
Yeah.
And I could have had a heart attack right then and there because we didn't know how bad it was. I was really pushing myself. So again, if someone thinks like that and they become obsessed with it, they can get really freaked out. And for me, it's like, well, hey, it didn't kill me. I'm okay. Let's look forward. Let's be grateful.
Yeah. That's great. That's some pretty good adjustment. That's yeah. I would imagine. I don't know. Yeah, that's medical things are, especially of that nature, get pretty intense, and I'd imagine that would throw a lot of people into some serious anxiety. But
and depression. My personal doctor told me, he said within 6 months, he said a lot of people, when they reflect on and realize the magnitude of what they did, how close they came to death or went through death like I did. He said a lot of them, they just get hit by a real deep depression a few months later. It just comes out of the blue. So I don't plan on doing that. People ask me, are you now having a different perspective on life and stuff like that?
Yeah.
And I'm not because to me, if I did go down that path of trying to reflect on my mortality and everything like that, I think that would make me more prone to this depression, distress, anxiety, and everything that I just described. If I just treat it as matter of fact, like, hey, it is what it is. It happened. I'm doing what I need to take care of my health. I'm monitoring. I'm on all these meds, doing my blood work, doing all those things. You see, you have to be on a spectrum, because if I just deny it, there are people who go, no, it's diabetes, who cares, or whatever else. Like, no, that's being stupid. But if you look at, if you look at it reasonably and do what you got to do, and that's what I tell my patients. It's like, just deal with the reality in front of you, right?
Hmm.
Try to keep a positive perspective, and that's the way to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm glad you're doing well with it. I figured you must have been okay because you got right back to Twitter and arguing with people online. I went, God, he's right. How does he go through that and still come back and
That I'll tell you, because I had to take some time off work, longer than I expected. I mean, look,
oh,
truth be told, I did
take
teach a
that
course
time.
five. I did teach my sex class 5 days after the surgery
Yeah,
from my hospital bed in my hospital gown. I just thought that'd be a kick. I got my Skype set up, and
yeah,
you know, that's something the students can say. That what other professor or
right.
instructor 5 days after surgery in a hospital gown? So it's just a
That's
silly,
ridiculous.
silly thing.
Yeah.
So I did that, but all the other work I had to wait a while because I was still on lots of drugs.
Hmm.
I couldn't concentrate. My body
Yeah.
was still not doing so well. But sadly, I could think enough to write on
To
Twitter
write
that
a
all
tweet.
this
Yeah.
seriously, and I got
Yeah.
so immersed because I wasn't doing my usual 80 to 100 hours a week of work, so I had to channel that into something else. So
Right.
I went balls deep in,
Yeah.
in Twitter.
So is it safe to say then that in general, even your activities and things haven't changed a whole lot since, or are you doing the sort of like, ooh, I better value my time thing more and kind of, or I mean, you might have been the type of person that was already doing that, but has it focused you more on the present and whatnot going
I
through
would
all
say
this?
more of just making sure I don't push myself too hard.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Again, it's not a new appreciation for life or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. I mean, I have had experiences like that where I realized I was pushing too hard. I
Yeah.
always think I know my limit, and I know what my limit is, but sometimes you come really close, and it's so easy to kind of just cross that line. And
Yeah.
that limit is not like that. That's a hard line. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I should at times. Okay. And that's when I realized I got to step back a little bit. I'm handling it, but what impact is it having on my health, my family, other interests? So, it's not a huge change for me, but it's definitely reminding me to be mindful of these different factors because it's so easy to get consumed in something, especially when you love it. I mean, I love my work.
Yeah.
There's purpose, there's meaning. I get so involved in it. Like, it's not just some stupid job. I won't make any other. I won't specify any job, but there's real
Yeah.
meaning to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for me to say, like, if I'm spending all my time doing it, I'm helping the world or a person or something else. But you know what? There's a family. There's other people I should be devoting more time to as well, more than my patients or clients that I'm assessing or students.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about the extent of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's always a tricky thing to have the proper sort of work life balance, and sort of, especially if you have a family. I think that's a lot harder. If you're single, you can just
Sure.
dive in completely. But yeah, that's something I think people have a hard time. I know I tend to balance either too much one way or the other. I'll dive into work real hard for a while. I'm kind of manic about it, and then suddenly I go, oh, that was crazy, and I back off and I barely touch work for a long time. I look at my bank account and go, that's weird. We're not sales are down. What's going on? Oh, because I haven't done any
Right.
fucking work. So it's yeah, I struggle with that one myself a bit because I think I lack a little bit of discipline. So when you lack discipline and you're an entrepreneur, it's it can be a challenging thing. So working with
Yeah, and you have to be careful because if it's like this, like it's like yo-yo dieting,
yes.
right? And the transition, a lot of people have a hard time with transition. So yes, if you jump right into work and then you stay away from work for a while, each time you do that transition throws off your system basically, and so it takes a
Yes.
while to get back into it. So it's funny, people always they joke about having to uh, like take a vacation after a vacation, right? And they go, wait a second, you
Yeah.
just had a week off or 2 weeks off in some sunny place. Why can't you just go back to work? Well, the fact is, your body and your mind are operating at a different pace once
Mm-hmm.
you're relaxing and stuff like that. So it does take a few days to kind of ease your way back into that old schedule. So it's not
Yeah.
a joke. Like, even though people joke about it, I've told people, like, yeah, you give yourself an extra couple of days to transition from the vacation to work, because otherwise you're going to be miserable at work. You're not going to be functioning well. And all you'll be thinking about is, I want to be back to where I was a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I even think just having a schedule in general that's a normal sort of routine. Even let's say like okay, maybe I put aside 2 or 3 hours a morning for work, even if I'm not necessarily have a lot of tasks, just to kind of keep to that at a certain time might help. Because I learned this a little bit by watching my daughter, which I'm sure you know, having kids. Something about them, they get off schedule and they become nightmares. And it's a weird thing. It's just a simple matter of like, hey, go to bed at about the same time every night and wake up about the same time and keep meals on, at least a sort of order. And when I do that with my daughter, she behaves so much better. She's so much more relaxed and calm and just sort of, doing her thing and seems well put together. And I wonder sometimes as adults, I mean, we can kind of counter it and cover it up a little bit better. But I sometimes wonder if we suffer from that as well when we drastically alter our schedules and play around with things like that.
Yeah, most things, and you'll see me using hand gestures. Like most things to me exist on a continuum or on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, the need for structure and order. I think it's universal to have some type of structure, because without the external structure when we're growing up, we don't learn to internalize that structure. Then you can't self-regulate. So it's very important to have that. But once you've got that, everyone has a different degree to which they must maintain a routine. So for me, I'm on the really low end. I thrive on chaos. I thrive on difference. If I was in a 9 to 5, if I was a 9 to 5er, I would have jumped out of the highest building I could find. Okay, that just doesn't work for me. Whereas other people, they have to have that routine. My best friend, Matt, like he's like every morning he does this, and it's sort of like your daughter. When he's thrown off the schedule, he really feels it. Whereas for me, I'm just, as I said, perpetual chaos, and I function better that way. Give me a schedule, and I'll feel constrained. Yeah. So you got to find what's right for you.
Well, that's good to hear too. I think I'm still working that out for myself. So I think what it comes down to half the time with me is just, am I feeling like I look at my anxiety levels and I go, okay, why am I feeling really shitty or depressed? And okay, is it because I'm avoiding work? Should I put more time in here? Or, is it something else? Is it just the financial things or whatever? But that's usually my gauge of like, do I need to get back to work? Am I out doing other things and not enjoying them for some reason? Oh, okay, probably because I didn't feel like I put in the time to actually earn it or whatnot. But I have a bit of a problem with that in general. In fact, that was somewhere on my questions list that might be related. I was going to say, so how would, if one had negative emotions around being related to sort of having a fairly good life or having all these opportunities and abilities, but not living up to the potential or I guess some sort of feelings of guilt and such. I mean, I think in general it's easy, especially for people in our society and, living a fairly rich life in, in Northern America and doing well. I think I can't be the only one suffering from some sort of guilt, like I'm not working hard enough or doing enough to pay for all these wonderful things that are in my life. That's got to be some sort of commonality for folks. And I wonder, are there psychological, in some ways it's a good barometer of like maybe you do need to get back to work, but I can also see people just strictly punishing themselves for no good reason with those kind of emotions too.
Yeah, well, in the last number of years, I've really taken a different approach to therapy. So I'm really a big fan of the positive psychology aspect. Mm-hmm. And part of that is having the right perspective. So again, getting back to the spectrum, for somebody who doesn't appreciate how good we have it, they're going to always be miserable because they always want more. They're going to be entitled. They're going to be very self-serving, like me, I want it all. I deserve it all, and they don't appreciate just how good they have it. Then there's the people like, who go too far and say, I feel guilty. What about all the kids starving in Africa and, or in war-torn countries? Why am I living in this life of luxury? And I don't deserve it. I didn't do anything I was just simply born here by chance, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So either of those extremes is not healthy. The healthier perspective is like gratitude for being so lucky to be here, right? And then when you feel that you're not doing enough quote, or you haven't earned it or something like that, saying, I'm going to do my best as much as I can. And that's being realistic here. I'm not saying every single day, but I'm going to try my best to, take advantage of these opportunities, to do good for myself, to do better for others, to try to do something, do something meaningful for the world around me. And if you have that perspective of, I'm going to just try, the idea is to try and to not measure yourself against anybody else, but rather against yourself and what you've already done. So if you've done nothing like that, and now you've done a tiny little thing, well, it's a tiny little thing better than what you did before, which was nothing. And then you can build on that and build on that. So the healthy perspective is never to go, as I said, too far in the extreme, saying, I'm not doing enough. We could always do more. Right? Geez, if I took that perspective, I'd be depressed as well. I know I do a lot. I do more than most people, but there are other people who do more than me, far more than I do. And I don't get resentful or envious of them. I get inspired by them. And, and so, like, I hate to say it, but let's say Joe Rogan, since we're doing a podcast, he's the epitome of the Renaissance man. He keeps learning things, doing new things, and pushing himself and this and that. And it's funny because then he'll talk about other people who put him to shame and so on. And
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
But in each case, is to look at that person and say they are a human being. And whether they had more opportunities than me or fewer or this advantage or that, it doesn't matter. They found it in themselves to push themselves to a different level. And I'm myself level, and I'm not even pushing myself to 100% capacity. I'm just doing it to a certain degree, and I'll toy with it and play with it and see what works. And to me, every experience is a learning experience moving forward. I'm always tinkering. I'm always trying to find the right balance. I'm always trying to find what gives me purpose and meaning and so on. I don't obsess over it. I say always, of course, not all the time, but like I'm monitoring, checking in and so on. And I think if you take that perspective, you can easily find yourself doing better than before. But once again, keep the perspective only on yourself, not on what other people are doing. That's a great way to depress yourself.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I wonder too, do you feel like people can also go too far with trying to do too much for the world? I could see how it could almost lead to some sort of messiah complex where you're going, I think it's very healthy to work on yourself, but I know that I will also feel guilty when I feel like all I'm doing is working on I made myself better, but I didn't give back to the world. Okay, I mean, in a way you are giving back to the world by being a better adjusted person, but then you start I know I will start leading, I got to help more and more people, I got to do this, I should be part of this big thing, but I wonder if that can also lead to some imbalance as well, where you're trying to do way more than meddle with the world, perhaps more than even one should.
Yeah, so that brings a few things. One, this is not a symptom of bipolar disorder, but it's something I've seen with many, if not all of my bipolar patients and people I know who are bipolar, including my father, okay? Many artists as well, that the thing that I've seen, and again, it's not an actual symptom, but a lot of people with bipolar disorder seem to be hypersensitive to the world around them. And I don't mean the immediate world, but just this more global perspective. And so they feel that they have to do this and they have to do that. And so when the hypomania or mania strikes them, that's when they start kind of channeling that energy. And there's a reason that a lot of artists happen to be bipolar. So for them, that's a way of and there can be a sort of a narcissistic point to it. Like, people need to see what I'm going to do. They need, they're going to benefit from this thing that I do, even if it's just art portraying the ills that I see in the world. But the point is, there's this need to somehow fix the world. And I've told my patients, I say, stop it, because you're going to overwhelm yourself. You're going to distress yourself. You're never going to be able to do enough. So yes, it's very easy for people to develop that kind of complex that you said. And so I always tell people, forget the world. I said the world a little while ago, but to me, the world is, I always say, your tiny slice of the world. So as a parent, so if someone has a child, focus on them. If you can raise a kid who's not too shitty, you've done your part. Okay? Like, good. Seriously.
Yeah, that's true. It is a challenge.
It is. And that helps, and it kind of helps focus you to the right perspective and priorities. Too many parents these days, and I hate to say this because I've said it so many times, but I've seen it. Far too many parents abdicate their responsibility. They think that it's going to be up to the schools or YouTube or something else to take their kid or lead their kid in this direction. And I say, no, that's on you. You don't want to be let's go back to the balance. We don't want to be over enmeshed with our kids or too meddlesome and breach their boundaries all the time. But we do want to make sure that we are teaching them proper values, whatever those values may be, and just, again, make them into a non-shitty person. but a non-shitty person is a pretty good bar to set, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you don't have kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have kids, I'll tell you right now, and I've seen this, and I feel bad for some people who just feel that what legacy have I left? What's lasting? Where's my purpose? So I say, if you can't channel your legacy through your children, then do it through something else. And that's where you find other interests. That's where you do some volunteer work, because it's when people get older that they feel that way. Once they've passed 40, now they start realizing, okay, a man can keep going till whenever, but especially a woman who hasn't had children and realizes this too late, biologically, there's nothing you can do about it. Either they can adopt a child if they really feel the need. And again, making a difference in one child's life or two children's life is a huge thing. Or you devote your time to, again, helping others, doing volunteer work, working at a soup, volunteering in a soup kitchen or something else like that, or whatever it is. I'm telling you, this positive psychology thing that I'm talking about, this need to find meaning and purpose can't be overstated. I always tell people, and this is where I always have to discern, like from Jordan Peterson, because I say, look, I don't want to sound like a Peterson sycophant, but the fact is, I agree with what he's saying because I'm a psychologist. I know what leads to better mental health, and having meaning and purpose and goals, that gives you self-satisfaction. And if you're satisfied with that, happiness and joy flows from that, rather than making happiness or joy your direct goal. Because I tell people, you can rent happiness for half an hour. You can get high, you can do this or that, but then it's ephemeral. It disappears. Yeah. Meaning and purpose last forever, or last for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good one you picked. Yeah. Yeah, there's something in his core tenet teaching there that I think is really, is really brilliant and shared throughout many philosophies. Is that, if you find the right purpose and meaning, you can put up with the sacrifice or the misery of the world, the innate suffering that just comes with life. But that's what'll get you through at the end of the day. And I think that's what most people are really seeking, whether they realize it or not. And
Yeah, and they're lacking it. I mean, they really are. We've spent, and this, I don't have my tinfoil hat because I don't think it's any one person doing this, but I do think that people who are in a position of, power is too simple, but let's say somebody who's in a position to benefit from the apathy or the lack of meaning or the distress of others, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, whether it's people trying to sell products on YouTube or whatever else like that. The fact is, they do benefit when people are lost. And I think that this people being lost has been, let's say, pushed. I think many people have been kind of pushed in that direction. And one thing is, and this is an unintended consequence, I hope. The phones came out, like the smartphones. I'm telling you right now, I know a lot of people have been talking about it, and stats are showing that people's perception of their mental health, people's stress, stuff like that, have all taken, in some cases, significant changes. But the thing is, the one thing that I don't hear people talking about enough, and I've been really preaching this, is that by focusing on these external devices during our quiet times, and I may, if I said this in our last thing, I apologize, but I've been really pushing this. I've seen a change in people's demeanor, their capacity for reflection, their ability to introspect and gain insight on themselves and their experiences. And to me, that's the hugest detriment. And any adult who's over 20 years old, or maybe 30 years old, has spent had spent some of their adult life already doing that. They at least kind of learned that ability. But now, anybody in the past 10 years, anyone born or in the past 15 years or so, they've spent most of their kind of waking life exposed to these devices. Yeah. So they never really developed the capacity to introspect, to learn about themselves. Because here's the thing, learning about yourself is scary. It reveals our flaws, our fears, our weaknesses, our foibles, all these things. And so it's a hard process in the best of times. If someone never learns that even from a young age, as a child, when it's got less importance, when you're a little kid and you screw up, it might mean like the end of the world at the time, but in reality, it's not, right? And through that, you learn resilience, you learn a hardiness, you learn to pick yourself up and try better and take risks and change here or there and learn from your mistakes. If you don't have that, if you don't learn that from a young age, you're going to find yourself, and we are seeing this, we're seeing a lot of young people, young adults who don't have the capacity. So they're terrified of the world. They're terrified of taking risks, and they're terrified of failure because they never had that experience and they don't know what to do with it. They haven't learned to introspect. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest fear of the changes that are going on. So, and I think others have said this, that the people in Silicon Valley, the ones who are making these phones, they use flip phones. They don't use smartphones. They use flip phones because they recognize some of the harms of that these are doing. So it's not just about being obsessed. It's not just about spending all your time on Candy Crush. I think it's far deeper and more pernicious than that.
It does seem to be pretty bad, and every study I've ever seen shows that the more time people spend on Facebook and things like that, usually the more they suffer mentally, whether or not they think they're doing well. Like I talked to my wife about that, and she's like, well, what if you're only, filtering out things and you're just reading the, maybe the positive stuff or keeping up with friends. But even then, there's always ways that it tends to mess with you, especially when you're using it to, I think, avoid having those quiet times where maybe you have to think about, well, nothing or yourself, or just have those spaces, because it's so easy to just fill everything in these days. Where I get a moment of space and time, or I just pick up a device and just go do something. And I've thought it myself. I'm doing much better now. I think with it, I've maybe too much. I think I've cut way back in the last. I'm pretty much off Facebook for the most part, and I'm trying to do the celebrity thing where I sort of post and run, and I don't come back for conversations. So just here's an article I think is interesting. I'm out of here, and that seems to be a little better. But that and I've been playing golf, and I know everybody's probably gonna be making fun of me for it, but it's nice. Like I'll just go out even by myself and just sit there, and it's it's a couple hours of just walking around in manicured nature, and just not. I don't let myself pick up a device or even turn on music or anything. I just kind of walk around, and it's been a nice break. And I definitely. I was actually on my list of questions for you was what level of social media involvement is healthy? Because there are obviously aspects of it that are positive, and it's nice to stay in touch with long distance family members or post pictures of your kid that they wouldn't get to see or something like that. But there are days where I think, God, I'd probably feel a lot better just being 100% off of it. But do you think there's some level that's manageable? And is there a spectrum for that where it's like, okay, this may not be harmful at this minimal level?
Oh, for sure. That's so first, just because somebody will say that the studies that you're talking about, because there's lots of them showing higher levels of distress, anxiety, stress, depression, the more time you spend online, they'll say, well, that's correlation, not causation. So maybe people who are depressed and lonely and anxious are the ones who spend more time online. So I can tell you, though, clinically speaking, having worked with a lot of people who have these issues, yes, it's possible. Well, we do know that people who feel socially anxious or disconnected or whatever will seek refuge in social media. But there's no doubt, having spoken to so many people, that it's the other way around as well. It feeds into it. So spending all this time, and this is becoming such a cliche, which is ironic that everybody seems to know that when you do go online too much, a lot of people, all they're seeing is a fantasy. They're not seeing all the crummy realities of people. Most people don't do that. And the people who do post shit about their life, like who's always miserable or saying all this stuff, people just tune it out. They don't want to go to other places.
Yeah, right.
Right. So even though everyone seems to know this, still they are susceptible to walking away, whether it's conscious or unconscious. They walk away from social media feeling like they're just celebrities that they're getting to watch. This is the change that people need to understand. I don't think people have fully understood. In the old days, if we saw lifestyles of the rich and famous, or you're watching some show like Entourage or something like that, part of us knows, okay, this is not real. It's fantasy. I can be envious of it. I can whatever, but part of me knows, it's in a category that's beyond me.
Yeah.
But you see your peers, your friends, your high school, former high school, university friends, whatever. Then you say, but wait a second, they aren't in that different category. We were the same.
Yeah.
And so people can so easily feel that they're not keeping up with the Joneses. And I'll tell you, it's called upward social comparison. When you're looking at people above you, especially people who are supposedly your peers, that can be, it's a great way to depress yourself.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is, I don't think it's the amount of time that you spend on Facebook or other social media. I mean, although if you're there too long, of course, yes, it's what proportion of that compared with real interactions, right? What proportion of the time that you're spent on that are you spending doing it feeling like envious and upset or stalking former lovers versus communicating, like you said, like, seeing old family members, old photographs or whatever. So it's about proportion, not about absolute amount of time.
Yeah.
And I do tell people, use social media, like for some people, it's like as a way to communicate with people. Don't just passively receive the information. Get engaged, be active to a certain degree. And I screwed myself over when I did the free speech talk that you came up for November 11th.
Yeah.
The way I screwed myself over was, and I'm doing this because I'm not a hypocrite. So I was telling people that even if you're nobody like me or like most of us, you can still be involved in the fight for free speech or critical thinking or whatever belief you have by supporting others. If you see someone being attacked or if you see someone saying a message that you think needs to get out there, like it, retweet it, do whatever, right? So my problem is because I said that and people are doing it and so many people contacted me and said, thank you, that motivates me to do it too. I can't piss off and not do it. Right?
Right.
So I'm doing that, and because I could easily turn off Twitter or whatever, and I've done it for a few days, but then I think, okay, I'm not living up to what I said. So, I'm going there liking and retweeting and stuff like that, and not blindly doing it, although sometimes I've retweeted things I shouldn't because I didn't fully read it. Yeah. But for the most part, I'll read and say, yeah, I want, to respond to someone, to encourage them, to get them to keep doing it so they don't lose hope, so that they feel that they can fight against what might seem like, something that's unobtainable or insurmountable. I'm saying, no, if enough of us do this, some change can happen. So, morning and realize I just lost 2 hours of my morning doing this shit. It just flies away. So even though I think I'm doing good, I'm doing something meaningful, there's better uses of my time, and I have to be careful of that. So that's, I think, the barometer that we need to use is, comparing it to other aspects.
Yeah, I think that's a wise way to go, and I've been trying to focus more on actual interactions, and part of it too, we just moved to a much smaller town than we were in before, and it's weird because I know less people here, but I'm probably having more interactions in real society than I ever was, back near Portland. And it's nice, and it's even nice when I bring up, politics come up or something like that. At least a lot of us, I tend to disagree with damn near everybody I run into. However, it's nice because people are just so much more civil in real life when it comes down to discussing serious issues. I mean, I'm sure they go home later and go, "Oh, what a dumbass," but at least at face to face, people rarely get in the kind of heated, anxiety-causing debate that sometimes you get into online. Because I'm a little sensitive to when I get into online spats, and sometimes it's better when I know I'm well armed with good information and I just stand my ground and go, oh, whatever, you're just, you're not thinking straight, and that's fine, and I've proved my point and I'm done. But sometimes even in those cases, I will walk away and I'll be thinking about it later. I'm like doing work and I'm thinking about some stupid tweet that some jackass sent me that was questioning something that I know I have a firm belief in, but it's still bugging me, and that drives me nuts. So I try to mostly keep myself when I go on Twitter now, to keep to the positive thing. Like, we'll support the people that I think are doing the good work, and every now and then interject a thing or two myself. But and then actually I love these podcasts for that reason, because I get to kind of put something out there and talk with someone, and without getting into weird internet spats. So it's good. But every now and then you got to do that too. But I've definitely been taking a bit of a hiatus, and it does feel a bit better for it.
Sure. I think virtually everybody who said that, when they do take a hiatus from, social media, everyone almost always says, like, that was a good thing. At first it's a bit rough, but then they realize, because we're feeding into our more negative aspects of ourselves. And the thing is this, though, if someone is going to continue, like I am and like most of us are, I think it's important to put a time limit on it. right? Again, I'm not saying it's an absolute time, but if you find that, yeah, geez, I do get too immersed and it is detracting from other things, say half an hour or 15 minutes or an hour or whatever, put an alarm on, like there's, just so that you don't get sucked into it, because it is easy.
Right.
But the important thing is this, and this is to be honest with yourself. If you are walking away and you are thinking about something and you just can't wait to go back and just compartmentalizing, you're carrying that negativity into another part of your life. You're letting it bleed in. So with me, with the work that I do as a clinical psychologist, and I do, I've done hundreds, like maybe 500 cases for the court for Child Protective Services, where I assess families. I'm dealing with, abuse, neglect, murder, rape, like some terrible things. And if I were not able to compartmentalize, if I weren't able to put on a shelf and put a wall up and just not think about it, it would destroy me. So I think people need to try their best when they do go on social media. Before they even go on, they have to kind of go through a little mantra almost and say, okay, it's going to be contained to this, whether this equals 15 minutes or only one or two types of social media. But most importantly, that when I'm finished, when I turn it off, I'll take a few seconds, breathe, and say, you know what? It's done. Now I'm going to go into the real world, and don't let it bleed into the real world, because then you're dealing with the after effects, and it's stressful. Your adrenaline. If people took a measurement of the cortisol levels, they would be shocked at how much they're getting jacked up during the interactions.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I know I feel it. I'm a little sensitive to my physical conditions, I think, and I will notice it, and just things suffer. Sleep, and you don't heal as well. You're just not. Yeah, it'll tear you up over time too. Yeah. So. Yep.
Yeah, it's too easy. It's too easy to get sucked into it. And for the most part, I've always said this. Like, I know I'm not going to convince the people I'm speaking with in most cases, right? So it's not about them. It's about taking that discussion and trying to show other people who might be on the fence or who might not be on the extremes, showing them my ideas, and at the same time showing them why these other people are not necessarily acting in the best ways, and that some of their thoughts or their beliefs are not really, let's say, solid or well thought out or justifiable. So, that's what I'm trying to do, is through my interactions with the other people, show other people what's happening, let them see it, and then they can make a decision for themselves. And I'm hoping that I've conducted myself well enough that they'll make what I consider to be the right decision. Yeah. So that's how I see it. I'm not trying to beat somebody else. Sure, look, I'm a human, so there are times where it's like, this little snide comment, damn, it feels good, and they deserve it. like that.
Sure.
I own it, of course. It's always
can't help it sometimes.
Exactly. Just don't let it consume you, because it will consume you. You being not just you, but anybody.
Right. So. Yeah. Very true. All right. Let me jump around a bit, because we could let that topic consume us. I wanted to ask you. I don't think I asked you this one before, and I've been asking a number of people because it's something that I've suffered from. A little simple thing though. How do you I've been trying to eliminate silly things from my speech, like the use of the word "like" inappropriately. Do you have any tips for is there a psychological trick that I can do? I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm going, I need like something to cause myself pain every time I say "like" inappropriately, get my wife to, like, I don't know, shock me, something, anything. 'Cause it drives me absolutely up a wall when I hear myself, and I go, what, why am I doing this? And everybody has their version of that, whether it's or what, but the like thing in certain ones, they absolutely drive me up a wall. Is there, and you don't seem to suffer too much from any of that, at least not that I noticed. So, but
I do. Mine is okay and all right. Yeah. And it's because I'm teaching all the time, so I'm always checking in with people. It just becomes it's become a habit. Yeah. So I know that. So the solution, first one, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but really, truly, you can't change a problem until you acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. So being aware of it, I tell people, the first step is being aware of it. Second step is slowing down, which is ironic because I speak so quickly. By the way I'm speaking now, this is like 20% of my normal speed. If I get excited and I'm able to speak and people can follow, I'm going 5 times faster than this.
Right.
And so I have to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
My neurology, my biology, my psychology is all geared toward highly neurotic. All right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wired to
Yeah.
be on fire. My brain's on fire. And I'm just, I was a neurotic mess.
Yeah.
I was not calm or anything like that. So I tell people, I tell my patients especially, if someone like me who speaks a mile a minute, or 100 miles a minute, right, who's neurotic, who's angry, who's hostile, and all this stuff, if I'm able to change, which I did, anybody can do it because I was on the high end of the spectrum. So it is slowing down, being more mindful of that, being aware that there is this word that I want to avoid, recognizing that you're still going to say it, but if you can catch whenever you say it, that's the next step, which is you say it, you catch it, you go, okay? Or you say it, later on you realize, damn it, I missed. That's kind of the intermediary step, recognizing afterwards you said it. Then the next step is recognizing right after you say it. Then the next step is recognizing it as you're saying it. Then it's recognizing it before you say it. Oh, I'm about to say recognize that. And then the next one is to be able to eliminate it, and not fully, but 50, 70, 80% of the time. If you take it in that kind of progressive outlook, you have a much better chance of eliminating it, because if you get angry at yourself, if you beat yourself up, you're demotivating yourself, and you're going to continue to do it. So it's being objective and just measuring what you are doing now versus what you were doing the week before, the month before. So you're just looking at your own progress. If you have someone in your life, I've told this to so many patients, if you have someone in your life, like a wife or a friend or whoever, asking them to also be on, to be vigilant about it. Because if they hear you talking all the time, they've become accustomed to it. They don't even notice it. But having them do that, and you said about having like some snap, make it fun. Have your wife let her carry a water gun or an elastic or whatever, and every time you do it, zap. Okay, that could be something that it's a fun way of trying to change a behavior, and it does actually work, because every time you do it, you're attuning yourself to this habit that you're trying to eliminate. And that's the easiest thing. This is why when people are drunk, well, not drunk, let's say they've had a few drinks, their guard is down, or they're excited, or they're off their game, or they're tired or whatever. This is why the bad habits come back so easily, because our defenses are down. We're not vigilant about it. So we need to stop making it a habit, make it something that we're aware of, and you're changing your patterns. And so it's so easy to fall back on old patterns when you're in that state, those kinds of states I just mentioned a few seconds ago. So you need to change, and being on guard. If you know that if I screw up, someone's going to be squirting me with a water gun or something, right? That is, it does make you more likely to change a behavior.
Yeah, I would. I should probably get my daughter to smack me or something. She would love that.
Sure, make it a game, make it fun. Seriously, if that's what it takes, why not?
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. Yeah, it's something I think slowing down for me has helped a little bit when I don't try, because I'm a little bit like you, where especially I feel like I'm always trying to fit a watermelon through a keyhole when I'm talking to people. I'm like, okay, hold on, let me give you all of this, and I start just going and going, especially when I'm excited. But when I slow down a little bit, I also sound less like a 5-year-old. I get to maybe sounding like a 15-year-old with my voice, and just slow it down a little, and it helps to catch some of those things. So, yeah, I kind of wish I would have listened to my first stepfather back when he was bugging me when I was young, and he said, "Stop saying like." It was a real thing here. It was kind of a Valley, Southern California thing. Everybody just said like all the time, and I thought, wow, give me a break, old man, and wish I would have listened. It would have saved me some trouble.
Look, with my patients, just so you know, that's the one thing I tell them to make improvements. They're trying to get a new job or something like that. I do tell them that's the number one habit is the like. And people, because they get nervous, they're excited or whatever else. And I really think that part of it goes back to the phones again, this idea that we're always moving so fast paced. Right. And we're not having that ability just to be comfortable in the silence, okay with the gaps and the pauses and slowing down. people just feel they kind of feel uncomfortable. So if anyone else is trying this, when you do slow down, here's something I tell people: don't tell anybody that you're doing this for a week. This is for fast talkers, of course.
Yeah.
Slow yourself down and see if anybody notices, and then after a week, or however many days, can't be one time. It has to be that they've seen you enough times. So it might be a month or whatever. But after they see you enough times, ask them if there's any change. Most people can't identify it, but they can say, yeah, you know what? Something was different. I couldn't put my finger on it. And the important thing of slowing down, I can't stress this enough. Again, it's not just about eliminating habits that you don't like. When you slow down, you're connecting with other people. You're connecting with your words. You're setting a pace. Try this with people who talk quickly. If someone talks quickly and you're empathizing with them, you're going to start automatically, your mirror neurons kick in, and you're going to start speaking a little bit more fast or kind of getting more into it or whatever. So if you intentionally slow it down, then the idea is to get them to kind of latch onto your speed, and they, without knowing it, will slow down a little bit as well. And then when you slow down, again, you connect on a different level. You're starting to reflect on what you're actually saying, or the other person's reflecting on what they're saying, or they're hearing you more, right? And it's funny because if you do this, you'll see it's almost a battle. You're slowing down, and they're trying to speed it up, and you're trying to find that balance. So, if you do it too much, you're going to be so focused on this battle that you're not even going to be attuned to what they're saying. So you got to be careful of that. But I really do think that that's what we're really missing a lot in society is this just ability to hear the other person and to connect with them and not think about what my next response is, but to really hear them out.
So, we are back with Oren Amitay after a little bit of a technical complication. My internet completely died. I have no idea what the hell was going on. It was an odd day. So, but anyway, we left off in a spot where I think we can just move around a little bit again. Although an interesting development that might have been related to our earlier conversation happened in the last few days. I noticed that Apple is coming out. They announced a software function they're going to do now with to kind of help you manage your online device time, where it'll sit there. You can limit, say I only want to have an hour on Facebook, and limit yourself, or it'll just tell you how much you're doing and all of that, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's especially considering they benefit if you're using your phone constantly. But but I thought that was an interesting development. At least somebody seems to be aware, even in the industry that's making this stuff, slightly aware of the issues around being on our devices too much.
You just froze on me at the last thing, Chris, where you said last 10 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting though that at least somebody over in Silicon Valley, where they're making all these things, actually is somewhat aware of it and trying to, or at least supposedly trying to do something about it. I don't know if they're just trying to look good, but I thought it was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I don't mean to be too cynical, but I see that as avoiding future lawsuits. I think that there are going to be some lawsuits coming, just like people would sue the tobacco companies, because the more and more research is coming out showing the harm that these devices do to people, adults, let alone children. I think it's going to be the children because, you would think, hey, shouldn't parents be the ones who are monitoring their kids?
Yeah.
Right? But that's not the world in this litigious society that we live in.
That's true. Well, maybe they were protecting from that because, it's supposed to help limit children's controls as well. I think that was a big point of the thing. So, yeah, you're probably right.
I'm sure that's it, because that way they can be seen to have, tried to do something. We've put in all the cautions. It's either that or they're going to send emails out saying, caution, too much viewing is bad for your mental health and physical, right?
Right.
So I think that's number one. But the thing is, I'm sure some people, we're going to get blowback where people are saying, oh, do you really need limits? Do you really want Big Brother to tell you how long you can be on and stuff like that? And from what you're saying, I don't know this too much, so I'm assuming that they're not telling you how long. Is that you set the time? No, you
set it. Yeah, it's totally optional. Yeah.
Right? Anybody, I'll tell you right now. I mean, I'm going to give you a weird example, okay? It's this example I give in my sex class all the time, and I just gave it just yesterday, or 2 days ago, so I'm going to use this apropos my class. I use this example of where I say that somebody, former student, he loved to go to clubs, He loved to dance, whatever. I'm not going to give the whole story, but the bottom line was he was afraid that he was going to cheat on his girlfriend. And so I asked my students, what would you suggest? And they always give these ridiculous suggestions, like bring her with you, or don't drink,
Right.
don't go to clubs.
That's gonna
So
happen.
they're reasonable, they make sense, and they're effective, but they're not going to actually happen because they're not realistic for him.
Yeah.
So I said, the thing that I told him to do, and there's no shame in doing this, is if you know you have a weakness, if you're honest enough, strong enough to say, here's where I'm going to screw up potentially. Well, you know what? Bring the anti-wingman, the cock blocker.
Nice.
So you have your best friend or whoever that you trust, that
Yeah.
they're not going to rat you out to your girlfriend and say, do you know what he asked me to do?
Yeah.
And, right? So I say, you can dance, you can flirt, but as soon as you cross a line and you tell your friend, no matter what I say or do, you do not let me do it. Have my girlfriend's number on your phone. Be ready to text her if I start crossing line things. So basically, you're frozen again. All right. So it's having the insight, the honesty, and the courage to confront your own weaknesses, your negative proclivities, and doing something to prevent it. And wishful thinking or silly interventions, or interventions that are probably not going to be successful, to me, are not nearly as good as something that will work, regardless of how it looks. So if you have to have someone else or a device, whatever, where you time it and say half an hour, 1 hour, whatever, if that's what it takes to get you out of that state, because once you're in that state, time flies. You lose so much time. We know this. When you get so absorbed, you don't know how much time you're spending. So anyone who's going to decry this and go, oh, that's silly, that's weak-willed, whatever, I think they're being silly. They're not being practical and pragmatic, which is what I'm all about.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, agreed. And as far that's an interesting thing with your student there and the club with that. That's that can also go the other way if you have the wrong friend with you who just doesn't give a crap and is like, no, I keep it quiet. It's like that can be the worst kind of encouragement, especially after a few drinks. Your judgment center's just gone anyway. So you also gotta watch out who you.
And then, by the way, just that's where the honesty comes in, because I told them. And I said, yeah, that's really good when you're sober in the light of day, but when you're not, when you're drinking, we know, research shows, you get tunnel vision. This is why people drink and drive. They know that they shouldn't do it. They know it's potentially going to kill themselves or someone else. But in that moment, all they can see is, this is what I want to do. I want to get home, or I want to take this girl somewhere else, or whatever. And that's all they're focusing on. They're not focusing on the potential consequence, right? So cheating on your partner, the potential consequence, pregnancy, disease, getting busted, right? Doesn't mean anything in the moment. So anyway, that's my approach to therapy, which is, again, practical, realistic, what works. Everything else is just whatever.
I think that's the best way to approach it. And speaking of kind of related things of that, I think I posted this question on Twitter, and we had a short conversation about it on there. But actually, it's two questions sort of. So I posted two things that I asked about. One of them was, how can I maintain a mental state of mind that would be as if I had 1 to 2 drinks all the time? And that relates to my other question that I asked later on that I think it relates, which is, if you're an overly conscientious individual, like, if, for instance, in my case, I think I did Jordan's version of the test on the Big 5 personality traits and tested at like the 95th percentile for consciousness. So it's our conscientiousness, excuse me. If you're so much of that it seems like it might actually be limiting you or making you too self-conscious, all that, which how can someone maybe dial that back a little bit? And that's why I brought up the drinks question before, because I think it's the same problem where it's essentially, I've noticed when I have 1 to 2 drinks, it shuts down just enough of that thinking to stop overanalyzing, to stop worrying about what everybody else is, thinking when they're looking at me, and just sort of, be a little more in that Zen state. However, it's very easy to go over that line too. You go over, past a couple drinks, and you're going the wrong direction. So, but any tips or techniques for that sort of situation? I can imagine a lot of people suffer from that.
Oh, for sure. And you don't have to have the actual disorder, social anxiety or social phobia. You can just be, as I say, overly conscientious, self-conscious, inhibited, fearful, any of these things. So
it's old-fashioned and it's very simplistic, and I'll explain how we do it, but it's all about exposure. It's about putting yourself in situations where you force yourself, not that you find yourself in the situation, you force yourself to go in the situation where you can start challenging and confronting the types of fears or beliefs or whatever that you have. And you do it sober, because the alcohol is, it's great, fine, go for the 2 drinks. Suddenly, magically, you're a great dancer, okay? But with the sober challenging, this is the thing. So the cognitive behavior therapy, everybody talks about it. It's always listed as the #1 therapy for all these different conditions. And, the research shows that it's no better than any other major therapy, but it's what people hear about because they've got great marketers. Right. So, and it's very rigid. The CBT practice. The reason I'm saying this is if I say I'm about to talk about some CBT techniques, along with acceptance therapy techniques, somebody might turn off and go, CBT, I've heard it's rigid, it doesn't work. Well, that is possible, but that's more about the therapist rather than the therapy. So as long as we're realistic about it. So here's the thing. So CBT, they basically tell you, challenge these maladaptive, unrealistic, dysfunctional thoughts. No, everyone's not going to laugh at you. No, they can't see that bead of sweat starting to, all this stuff. And that's, on paper it's great, but in reality it doesn't work because your limbic system, the amygdala, the emotion centers, that's firing up before you're even aware consciously of what's going on. So you're already entering into this situation jacked up. Yes. Right? So I always tell my patients, I use CBT techniques, but I'm much more realistic. And I'm hoping other therapists do this too. I don't just tell them do ABC and it'll work. I say do ABC and here's why it's not going to work. And here's why we've got to try to circumvent that. Or do it. Sorry, you're occasionally freezing, so I'll pause when I see the freeze, okay?
Too. Yeah, don't worry about it. It's catching up. That's a weird lag issue I can't seem to get around, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So here's what you do. So the first thing is to be, again, really, this is where acceptance therapy comes in. It's to be very realistic about what you're feeling, all right? That you're not going to just will it away. You're going to feel uncomfortable. So the only way to get through discomfort like that, you can't think it away. Some people can, but most people, I teach them, just breathe properly. It all comes down to proper breathing. And it's diaphragmatic breathing, YouTube it. But I'll tell you right now, if you watch anybody teaching how to breathe, if they're teaching to breathe deeply through the diaphragm and your chest and shoulder, or their chest and shoulders are still moving, they've done it wrong. If you can breathe so that it's purely through the diaphragm, not the chest and shoulders, it truly enables you to tolerate any discomfort. I have people tolerate panic attacks, the worst feeling in the world, a full-blown, not a bit of anxiety, we're talking a full-blown, I think I'm going to lose my mind, I think I'm going to die, panic attack. And they can just breathe right through it. And it's like, okay, here it comes. It's not so bad. It's not so bad. It's going to go away soon. So I tell people, if you can breathe through a freaking panic attack, you can breathe through any other discomfort. So don't minimize or discount it. Sounds so simple, but it's powerful. So anyway, so you're doing the breathing. You're going in the situation. And the thing about CBT, the thing that's so good about it is that you set the let's say the I'm trying to think of the word here, the schedule, so to speak, the pace. So you don't suddenly, let's say you want to be less inhibited, you want to be able to ask. Pausing, I'll talk slowly. Yeah. So you want to ask women for their phone numbers. The pickup artists, there's two ways to do it. There's the flooding technique, and this is what pickup artists tell people to do. And I did this many years ago before pickup artists became a thing. I just did it for my own self improvement. I went to every single girl. Every time I'd go to a fast food place, it was the summer when I was 17 or 18. I was pretty well built. I was tall, not bad looking. And every time I went to these places, my goal was I would go to the cashier, and every time she'd ask me, what else, or can I get you something else, or what else would you like? I always answered with your phone number. Every time. Didn't matter who was there. There could be 20 people behind me, and sometimes there were, all right? Didn't matter if she was hot. Didn't matter if she was out of my league or well below my league or anything like that. I don't care how many people were there. I asked her every single damn time. And I'll give you the answer. The answer, I asked probably about 50 people. The question I always ask them is, how many phone numbers do you think I got? Okay, most of my students are assholes, so they say 5. Yesterday, one of them, she said 40 out of 50. I'm like, thank you, I'm taking you home with me. She's a very nice older woman. And the answer is 0. I got no phone numbers. But it wasn't about getting the phone numbers, right? It was simply about inoculating myself to the embarrassment, the shame, whatever. So that's one technique that pickup artists teach people to do. Just go out there and experience the shame and be able to live through it. The problem is, if you actually have social anxiety, you're not just going to live through the moment right there. When you leave, you're going to be playing it in your mind over and over, distorting it, making it much worse, and really distressing yourself. Yeah. So it does work for some people. A tiny minority of people can do the inoculation method. Everybody else has to do the CBT method, which is at your own pace. So you figure out, what can I handle? Don't go up to the hottest girl in the room and ask her for a phone number. You try something much easier, and everyone's got a different level, right? For some people, go into a coffee shop and asking for extra cream after they've already got their coffee, they can't do that, right? That's the most extreme. And for other people, it's like about saying certain things like, you got my order wrong and stuff like that. Anyway, the point is, you challenge at a low level that causes some discomfort, but not too much. And you repeat it over and over and over. You do it over and over. And the thing with CBT, one of the beauties of it is there's no failure. Because if it doesn't go the way you expected, if you break out in a sweat or whatever else, or you pass out, you'll never pass out. You'll never, ever pass out. Panic does not make you pass out. But whatever happens, you revisit it afterwards and try to be as analytical as possible and say, well, what went wrong? What, here and there and stuff. So, again, someone with social anxiety, it's terrifying for them. But if you just have milder levels, you can analyze it. You do it in a place where it has no major consequences. Like, you don't do it during a job interview. You don't try out I'm going to tell an inappropriate joke. I'm going to try it during a funeral, or you don't do it then. You do it in places you can handle. And that's the beauty of CBT. It's manageable levels. The problem with CBT is that with help books, self-help books, or therapists, they make it seem like it's so easy. Why don't you just do it? A, many people don't do it. B, if they do it, they don't do it, enough times. And C, they'll usually screw up one place or in some regard. And this is why I always tell my patients, I say, look, expect all those things. You're not doing it for me. If you're not ready to do it, don't do it. You've got all the time in the world. Wait till you feel comfortable. You've got to be in control. Expect failure. Don't expect success. Have lower expectations. And I always tell them, what you're really doing is you're retraining your brain. Okay, thinking about retraining your brain is very, very new responses. Okay, so this is how you do it. Now, there's a whole bunch of the other thing that people can do before they actually do it. I should add another layer. And again, I always tell people it's like a package. Like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Put them all together. Try what works. Everyone's different. But one big thing is visualization, playing it out in your mind. What do I really think will happen? Do it in a worst case scenario. Get yourself really jacked up, thinking, oh my God, I asked someone out and their boyfriend's right there, or she's got a giant ring. How did I not know? And her husband's right there, and they're going to take me out to the back and beat me up. You play it out, because if you can tolerate that discomfort and breathing through, right? You should be able to tolerate almost anything. Now, I hope we don't get you beat up. But the whole point is, so many people are terrified, especially people who are prone to anxiety, are so terrified of the feeling that is associated with the failure. I mean, think about that. Why else are some people so afraid to do things? They're afraid of some emotional consequence, usually shame, embarrassment, humiliation. In some cases, there's real life consequences, right? So that we're trying to do it in a case where it doesn't have any real life consequences. So all you're doing is tolerating this discomfort. So again, imagining it, feeling it, being able to tolerate it, breathing. It's kind of a rehearsal, playing it out. And also, if you play it out over and over and over, the more you do that, you're kind of training yourself to be able to know what to say. Play out 20 different scenarios, 20 different ways it could go sideways, a few ways it could go right. Things like that. And that way, if it really does happen, I mean, will it play out like you expect? No. But if there's enough elements that you do in your mind, right, you put them out there, in real life, one or two of those things will probably happen, and you'll feel more confident. It's all about confidence. It's all about being able to tolerate the discomfort. It's all about being prepared for failure. And that's a perspective as well, where it's like, okay, if you do fail, really, what is so bad about it? Now, here's one thing. I got to be honest. I tell people, with today's age of cell phones and recordings everywhere, what is the real life consequence? In some cases, you might find yourself on YouTube, heartbroken, meme, 20 million people watch. You're going to be embarrassed, right? So there is a possibility. But you know what? If you do that and you're not a total asshole about it, right? If you're just a gentle, sweet person, you do it, you get humiliated, people put on YouTube, I guarantee you, if you're not an asshole, people will reach out to you and say, hey, I saw what happened, and they'll, out of sympathy or compassion or whatever, you're gonna achieve what you want one way or the other.
Yeah, I like that. I know for myself, even just doing this podcast and being as public as I am with me is sort of my little, a bit more of inoculation of just going, you know what, I know I'm gonna look at this later and think I sound like an idiot or whatever, but just get it out there, and the more I do it, the more confident, or at least less. I worry about it a lot less, about being judged for how I am or whatnot. Seems to be that things improve a bit usually, although I've been a little bit out of sorts lately. But and would you recommend? So that's really good advice. And God, I wish I would have had you around when I was having panic attacks and serious anxiety. But would you recommend a similar thing for someone who maybe seems to be past like the level of anxiety attacks, but they're just trying to calm that sort of overly analytical mind so that they can actually just act instead of thinking and overthinking about the action? Is that a similar process? Or?
It's a little bit different. So if people are interested, they really should check this out. I don't have any stake in this book. It's called ACT. And apparently I was just told yesterday by a student, I shouldn't say ACT, I should say Acceptance and Commitment to Change Therapy. Okay. It's an acronym, ACT. But the book is called ACT Made Simple. And I think it's superior to cognitive behavior therapy because what it's doing, CBT is all about, I'm oversimplifying it, but it's really about suppressing thoughts, not allowing, challenging dysfunctional thoughts on the cognitive level. Right. And assuming that by doing that, you're going to change your negative emotions or your maladaptive or unreasonable emotions. It's not how emotions work. So with acceptance therapy, it teaches you to work with the emotions themselves. So the thing that, in response to your question, the person who's overly analytical, they're playing it out and everything, acceptance therapy helps you to kind of take this. This is the metaphor I use. Okay, I compartmentalize. So, if you're so much in your head, acceptance therapy calls that you are fused with your thoughts. Those thoughts, those feelings become your reality. Okay, they're not just a thought. You don't have the perspective to go, okay, this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I'm thinking, but it hasn't happened yet. It's not real, and it probably won't be that bad. You don't have that perspective. You have it. It's in my face. The fear is right there. And when it's in your face, you can't focus on the rest of the world. You can't function. How can you get a girl's phone number if this is what you're doing? You're walking around with with this stuff in your face. Right? So what you described is you were fused with your thoughts. And so the book talks about defusing it. And the way the metaphor that I use is compartmentalization. I say, I take this thought, I don't deny it. I know it's there. I let it go through me. I feel a little bit of a wave of whatever. I say, okay, I'm going to put it over here on the side here, and I put up a wall. I know what's behind that wall. I'm just not there. At the beginning it is. The book has a lot of charts and tables, exercises to teach you how to do it. But once you've done it enough times, it's instantaneous, right? You are then acting without thinking so much, or you're prepared. You know the thought's going to come. You can even do a routine. Okay, I know that there's going to be a thought coming, but as the thought's playing out, I'm just going to go anyway, and I'll deal with the thought later. I'm not denying it. I'm not suppressing. I'm not repressing it. I'm just letting it flow through me, and I'm not letting it interfere with my functioning, or too much, because it will a little bit. It'll trip you up a bit, but don't want to do it too much. And I really find that's the most effective way. That
makes a lot of sense. I know I did some CBT back when I was struggling with anxiety pretty hard, and And, there were times where I felt like, okay, maybe I could. It was sort of like, okay, let's interrupt this pattern and put your prefrontal in charge of everything and say, no, I'm in control and I've got this. And on occasion, that would work for the lighter elements, but it really, it didn't really work when you're really having one of those full-blown attacks or freaking out. And I did find that the sort of, more like an acceptance therapy, which I believe is almost more like a meditation thing too, where you don't try and stop the thoughts. You just sort of go, okay, you observe it, let it go through, and move along. Which, oddly enough, you ever read Dune by any chance? The book?
I only saw the movie.
Okay, or the movie. Well, you remember that then the litany against fear. It's the I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fears. Permit it to pass over and through me. When I turn the inner eye to see its path, there is nothing but I. But so that's a very much like a. I've tried to repeat that in the middle.
You've been saving that one.
Yeah, I remember that one. But I've kind of heard it a million times in the books and everything else too. But yeah, it was funny because I'm like, God, if I could just apply that a little better when I was having issues. But it's a similar thing. It's like, okay, just face it, let it come through, and move. That seems to work well.
And there's a couple of things about that. One, you said it's like meditation, which it truly is. And meditation, the fancy word that we use in the last 20-something years, almost 30 years, is mindfulness, right?
Yes.
It's pure mindfulness. Acceptance therapy says that they encourage people to do mindfulness because that's kind of the adjunct to it. Mm-hmm. Acceptance therapy is more of the cognitive aspect. Mindfulness is more of the physiological and the kind of the grounding aspect. So what you said, exactly 100% right. And number two, getting back to the acceptance, here's the thing. Someone who has a panic attack, let's say, for example, okay? Why do you think, let's say it's not a full-blown, like, just hits you right away panic attack. That's usually from panic disorder, where out of the blue, it just hits you, okay? There might be something, it progresses in a certain way later on. But let's just say it's the typical panic attack. The typical panic attack starts with some anxiety. You're worried about something. It's building up. You're not confronting it or you're not dealing with it properly. And then it kind of spirals into or elevates into this panic attack. Right. So why do you think when the first signs start happening with a panic attack, why do you think it mostly gets worse for most people? Because it doesn't have to.
Well, it's a feedback loop of sorts. At least for me, you start worrying about the worrying, and you start feeling you keep spiraling further down.
Exactly, mm-hmm. Exactly. So when we do work with people with panic disorder, panic attacks, anxiety, or whatever, we teach them that it's your reaction to the first signs that will determine which way you go. Which is why I do the breathing. It's like, okay, it starts hitting you. Go, geez, here it comes again. It's a bit of annoyance, but you know that if you do that, it'll subside much faster than if you go, oh my God, here it comes again. I know I'm going to go through it. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be 20 minutes of hell, etc. So what you said about putting yourself out there, challenging and everything, the thing that people have to do is they have to, as I said earlier, be prepared for failure and have perspective on that failure. And there's something I've been talking a lot these days in therapy and with my with students. I do the same thing. I've been doing therapy for many years. Of course, I change as experience builds and everything. But every once in a while, I see certain themes, or I present the same issues in different ways. So the way I've been dealing with these days is twofold. One, I say it's all about perspective, right? Because if your situation doesn't change, if it can't change, then we need to help you adapt to that reality and not beat yourself up, not react the bad way, not just fantasize about things because that takes you away from the present, prevents you from changing. But the second one is what I call containment. It's not just me. Other people call it containment too. But containment means, and it's basically, and it can take different forms. So if I start having a panic attack, containing it by saying, okay, it's going to be a few minutes. And people say you can't think that way when you're freaking out. Yes, you can. The first time, no, you can't. Second time, maybe not. Third time, but if you practice and practice with the idea that the more I do it, the more I'm going to be better at it, okay? And then the breathing will. So if you do the breathing, that allows you to actually think properly. The breathing truly, there's an oxygen carbon dioxide balance that you can achieve with proper breathing, with a proper diaphragmatic breathing. And with that balance, it allows you to think more clearly rather than feeling like your brain's on fire or everything's, getting distorted. Even if it's distorted, if I catch myself, like with the medications that I'm on now, since my heart surgery, I'm always getting lightheaded. And it's been like 3 months now. Uh, Crazy. I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times I get up and down in a regular day. Probably a dozen or 2 dozen, 3 dozen times. I still haven't learned get up slowly. Okay, three
Yeah.
3 months times, right? So when I get up, I get lightheaded. I see stars. I almost pass out.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't go, oh my God. I just go, oh geez, again.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I know I'm going to reorient myself. And very quickly, I am reoriented. So when people say, you can't think through panic, yes, you can. You can think through it if you keep your shit together, and the breathing is how you do that. And you don't do breathing the first time when you have a panic attack. You do it like during the day when everything's going cool. You're sitting, you're watching TV, you practice, make it a habit. And again, the whole idea is it's your perspective on what just happened. So if you can contain it and go, okay, here's going to be a shitty feeling for a few minutes, fine. If you make a mistake, if you embarrass yourself, you say, okay, I screwed up right now. It doesn't mean that I'm always going to screw up. And more importantly, it doesn't mean that I am a screw up. And that's what so many people do. So when they challenge themselves, when they try to make change, they don't do it perfectly, and they have the wrong perspective. They go, I'll never be able to do it. Well, you know what? Any athlete knows you're not going to be a Michael Jordan the first time you're on the court. You got to learn. You're not going to bench press 500 pounds the first time. You got to build up to it. So if you take that perspective, and I always try to help my patients find some area in their life where they do have the healthy thinking. They have applied it, whether they knew it or not. I say, you see, you can do it. Now let's try to transfer it to this other area.
Yeah, that's very good. I like that. And yeah, speaking from the sport or athletic perspective, that's definitely, I've noticed it's very, very visible in golf in particular. I mean, it happens in all sports that I've done, but man, I got to tell you, you break down your confidence, you start thinking wrong for you have one bad shot with an iron, and you might not be able to hit it the rest of the day if you start falling into that sort of that mental process, because it's a very particular thing, and everything has to be kind of in alignment for golf, otherwise things fall apart. So yeah, I don't know. My latest obsession, I can't stop thinking about it, so that's why I'm applying it to that at the moment.
So it is particular golf, you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think especially you notice that sort of problem, that negative thinking, or that sort of like if you start to lose confidence or think in the wrong way, you will immediately, you can fall apart, and people will do that all the time, or just, I'm never going to be able to do this or get this swing or whatever, just forget about it and give up, because I've never been in a sport that's so precise with every little thing. It's weird, because if you overthink about it, if you think about all the little pieces, you'll go nuts too, and you'll completely fail. But if you also just completely, flopping, whatever, too complicated, you're never going to get anywhere with it. So it's a delicate balance. I don't know. I feel like it's a very, very Zen sport in so many ways, because you have to be, flow, like thinking and moving and acting, but not overdoing it, and sort of, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's a little puzzle I'm trying to figure out, but you will notice bad thinking very quickly on the course. Yep.
Well, one thing, the way you're describing that, so I don't play golf, so I can't, I can relate theoretically, but not experientially. But the one thing that I can relate to, and most people can, is learning to drive. It's very similar. Yes. The first time you learn to drive, God forbid, as you got your hands on the steering the very first time, you try to, adjust the mirror or whatever while driving, you're almost going to have an accident, because everything, is an individual behavior, right? Once you master it, I tell people, you can be doing like 20 different things. You shouldn't, but you can be doing 20 different things while driving, because so many things become automatic because you're not thinking about them. The first time you are. Same with tying your shoelace. I told people this. It's even better this is closer to golf. Tell somebody, try to describe to someone how to tie a shoelace.
Yeah. Okay? Yep. Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and especially without even having it, just like imagining, saying, "Okay, how am I going to drive it?" Or how do you turn on riding a bicycle?
Yeah. Actually,
describe that.
My golf pro did the same. He's like, "Okay," he's like, "Let me explain to you why you don't need to over." He's like, "Show me how to throw a ball. I want you to just right now. Go ahead, just throw this golf ball 10 feet and explain it as you go along." And it's impossible. You can't. And it's just you realize the extreme complexity, and you do need to get it to things through a reflex. I guess it's part of what I'm trying to do, and with that other question, trying to figure out how can everything become more more intuitive and more reflexive, or more, just like driving. I know for me, like one of my most zen states I'm ever in is usually when I'm driving. It's one of the things I used to like delivering pizzas, because it was like most of the time it was just no problem, no social anxiety, nothing. I'm driving around, and when I'm driving, I have great thoughts. I start thinking about other things going on or coming up with new ideas, and it's a very relaxing thing. So it's very meditative, I guess, for me. Yeah. So it's what I love about driving.
Yeah. And that's why I go back to the breathing, because the breathing is the same thing. When you're focused. Sorry, you paused again. So, but when you're focusing on the breathing, you're not thinking about anything else. And I tell them, if you have trouble going to bed, it's not the perfect solution, but I say do the breathing. Technically you should breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. I say it doesn't matter. You don't have to, as long as it's slow, deep, and rhythmic. If you do that, you're getting yourself into that state that you keep describing, like the Zen state. And so, especially with sleeping, I say don't do it too complicated, because technically it's 4-7-8 breathing. You in through the nose to 4, hold for 7, out for 8. If you're trying to sleep, you're thinking too much.
Yeah.
But if you're in just a slow, rhythmic, deep breathing, you're focusing on only that. And sometimes I tell people, depending on how you sleep, put your arm there or something, so you're feeling the breath on your skin, or visualize the air. Because the whole point of doing that is, if you're focused only on that, your mind's not going everywhere else. And that's that Zen state that you talk about.
Yes.
So when you're driving, you weren't thinking about all these crazy things going on. So I always tell people, find a behavior, find a context, find something where you can start. And it's just like what I said before with CBT. Start at a level that you can manage. And if you've done it in one place, you can do it in any other place too. But it's just going to be harder depending on what it is. And I tell people, again, just yesterday in class, I was saying somebody actually had a phobia of sharks. I said, that's not a phobia. That's a rational fear. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But I tell people, when they're afraid to challenge something, I keep going back to asking a girl for her phone number, right? Don't mean to be sexist. It can be whatever.
So
just,
yeah.
Right. So, but I say that to if you are terrified of asking, a girl for a phone number, it's the same as saying, jump into that pool with a bunch of sharks. It's the same thing, right? It feels that way, and your body goes through almost the same physiological response. It's the same fear response. The amygdala, you have no control over that. It's getting lit up like mad. So again, all of this is to have the healthy perspective to recognize, good for you for trying to make change. Change is adaptive, if it's the right change, and expect it to be really difficult, expect to fail, but everything has a learning curve. And once you've kind of got to a certain place, it will be better. And if it's not working out, then you have to question what's actually going on. What thoughts, maybe you're someone who self-sabotages. Maybe you're somebody who's afraid that, okay, well, great, I asked that girl out. Now that I've proved that I can do it, I should be able to then try to settle down and get married. I don't want to get married. Married means the death. Married means children. My parents didn't raise me right. I don't want to have kids. And people start catastrophizing. That's containment as well. They're no longer thinking about asking that girl for a phone number. Now they're thinking about getting divorced. Divorced.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So that's the point of doing all this stuff. You have to be completely honest. If you're not honest, you're not going to be able to fine tune when you make mistakes. You're not going to be able to sharp is the wrong word. What's it called? When you're looking for problems with the computer, or whatever.
Debug.
Sharpshooting. Sharpshooting. I guess it is sharpshooting, isn't it? Troubleshooting. There we go. Troubleshooting.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Close. You're
not going to be able to troubleshoot if you don't have the honesty and you don't know what's going on. If you just say, fuck it, give up, or whatever, that's not going to help. You have to step back. And this is back where acceptance therapy is, and just ask yourself, separate from the experience, and just ask yourself, what went wrong? Why couldn't I get it done? Versus saying, why couldn't I get it done? It's purely objective. Yeah. There's no tone to it. You're trying to be a scientist. And everybody can have, well, unless they're sociopath, everybody can have compassion for other people's mistakes. You tell me about something that happened to you, you felt terrible, whatever. I can easily identify with it. I'm not going to beat you up because I'm not an asshole. If I do the same thing that you did, I'll beat myself up. So I try to tell people, why can you do it for other people but not yourself? And this is all words, and I tell them, I say, I know this is not going to magically make you change, and now you're going to have self-compassion because you've had years of parenting or something else or trauma or something that has put you on that unhealthy path. But have some hope. It's not blind hope. It's not blind faith. It's prudent hope and it's cautious that if you apply the right things, you do them properly, there will be change. And, be realistic. It might not be fast, but it's going to get you in the right direction, or a better direction at least.
Yes. And one only thing I might add to that is I've also found it helps greatly to have a really good sense of humor, or at least a self-deprecating sense of humor at sometimes too. If you can sit there and at least have a laugh at your mistakes and go, you know what, don't take it too seriously. It's going to happen. Silly things, can happen. Happens to all of us, and just have a good chuckle, or enjoy it a little bit in some funny way, then I think that helps a lot too. At least for me, it does.
Oh, definitely. And I tell that to all my patients because I'll laugh at them. But I say, I'm laughing not because I'm an asshole, all right? I say I'm doing that to help model for you what I want you to do. I want you to be able to take that same perspective. And I would never do that with a new patient. They come in and they tell me, oh, I can't, blah, blah. If I start laughing at them right away or haven't established that connection, I'm going to lose them, right? I'm just being a judgmental prick.
Yeah.
So, and I tell them, I say, I laugh at myself all the time. I mean, what you just said there was so important, is having the sense of humor about yourself, self-deprecation, although everything exists on a continuum. So I say, if you're too self-deprecating, I say, the problem is now people are going to think that you're fishing for compliments or validation or something. So I say, keep a lid on it to a certain degree. But yes, you're absolutely right. Because here's the thing. When people say, well, laughing at myself, isn't that going to make me feel worse? I say, if you laugh at yourself, you're actually putting yourself in a different emotional / mental state than when you're angry and beating yourself up or whatever. Yeah. Right? It's incompatible.
Yep. Yeah, I do the same.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I do the same thing for just even pain. I've tried to teach my daughter that too. It's like you stub your toe or something, you just try to, as soon as you can, try to get a laugh at it. Go, oh God, I'm such an idiot. Oh God, that hurts so bad, but you kind of, if you turn it into like a funny, humorous incident, all of a sudden you're not sitting there just going, oh, why'd I do that? I'm such an idiot. This hurts so bad. Because that doesn't do any good. Yeah.
Right.
Good stuff.
Right.
So
although I'll tell you, sorry, Chris, one thing I'll say though is just one thing. You're absolutely right about everything, except if someone does stub their toe or they cause themselves any pain, they should swear.
Oh, all right. I'm into that too. Yeah, start
a
with
legitimate swear. Yeah. Legitimate, not, oh, shoot. Okay, studies have shown that when you do swear, basically you're acting on the emotion, the appropriate emotion there, because you should be whatever. When you swear, it does reduce the pain. So a little side note there.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like a little release valve. Yeah, sure, why not?
Exactly. Yeah.
I like that. My daughter will probably be good at that too. much to mom's upsetness there, but anyhow. So I want to be conscious of your time, and I know we're going on.
I've booked a fair bit of time for you. Okay. I like talking to you.
Well, it is. It's a lot of fun. I love it, and I know I've got some more things, but I want to also save a little bit for just trying to get you to come back on one more time someday. So, or maybe reoccurring, hopefully. But because I
I'd like that.
Yep, yeah, it's easy, and I could so easily turn this into a giant therapy session for myself, and without you knowing. But you'd probably figure it out. But so, but I want to. But I'm gonna let us roll off here today. Plus, hopefully next time I'll get these technical issues solved a little bit better, because we still get that occasional freezing. I don't know what the hell that is. If anybody else records video Skype calls and has an idea, please email me. But overall, everything was pretty good, and thanks for coming back on. Let me ask you one more thing. Do you have anything coming up? Any big talks, work coming out? Anything that you want people to know about? Podcast episodes? What's going on?
Yeah, life is. I can't get into the details, but I got gobsmacked by something. Life. 3 weeks ago. So that's kind of thrown me off. And of course, with my surgery and everything, it slowed me down with my podcast. So no podcasts. I do hope people do check out Doc Amitay on YouTube, because I still have a whole bunch of other podcasts that they can listen to.
Yes.
They can watch YouTube videos, or go to the website, docamitay.com. Mm-hmm. Next Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am doing a podcast with a place called Andy's Place. It's like a rehab recovery for addictions. So if anyone wants to check that out, they should check out, I guess, they can either check out my professional page on Facebook, Dr. Oren Amitay, or Andy's Place. And it will be live 2 p.m. I'm assuming Facebook's streaming. I'm not quite sure. I'm not doing it. I'm just a guest on it. Right. So that's really about it. And again, check me out at docamitay.com. I got a bunch of audio podcasts that I'm still paying SoundCloud lots of money to keep up on their site, even though I'm not using them anymore. I still want those podcasts up there, so I hope people will check them out. Get me into the double digits for listening, for whatever you call them, views, auditory views, whatever you call it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I'm just thrilled that you're doing well, and I was worried when I heard about the surgery. I went, oh man, too young and too great a guy to be checking out. So I'm glad you're with us and doing well, and thank you again for your time. I will very briefly, since we're doing all these things with no cuts now, anybody, if you want to support this podcast, you can go just check out dsgear.com for all the hemp gear goodness, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Thank you again, Oren, for being on, and hopefully we will talk to you soon. Hang out here after I stop the record button, and then we'll have a chat as well.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks for having me, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.